Commissioner Randall has been kind enough to volunteer to give tonight's invocation, so if we could all please stand up for a moment.
You pray with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this wonderful day you've given us, Lord, and the wonderful rain we've had. And please continue to bless our area and this region, and bless our fine town, city, and our schools. And pray you be with us this evening as we make decisions on the behalf of the citizens of Aztec, and help us to try to do the best we can for the largest amount of people, and always do good in everything we do and decide, Lord. And pray you continue to bless us and look over us always. Pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I'm going to put you on the spot, Isaiah. Will you lead us in both pledges? Okay? All right. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico and see a symbol of our perfect friendships among the United cultures.
Okay. All right. Once again, thank you. We have quite a few folks here tonight. It's always nice to see. Carla, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Snowden.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brennan.
Here.
Commissioner Sykes.
Here.
Commissioner Randall.
Here.
Commissioner Lewis.
Here.
All present.
Okay. Our next item is agenda approval. If there are any items that do not meet the approval for being heard on this evening's agenda, now is the time to remove those items. I would like to remove item B. Yes, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I had the right one. Item B under land use hearings. So I would like to remove that item from tonight's agenda, so we can do some further discussion, and there's some other issues that have come up with that item. So we're gonna.
I think we can. We can't. I don't think we can remove it from the agenda, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, that's
Because
the advice I got beforehand.
Can we? With it being like, because we tabled it.
Tabled.
Specific.
We tabled it,
Table
we're
it
not
again.
moving it. Okay.
Correct.
So I
Tabled,
guess we'll just wait till we get down to it then. Okay. My apologies.
I'm sorry. I knew.
Is there a party from Hillcourt? Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. All right, well, I apologize. I retract that.
So I just knew that we had to be dates. We had to do.
No, I understand.
I'm
I understand.
sorry.
It was a quick conversation right beforehand, and it was just, okay, let's move on. Okay, so I'm going to start this again. Next is agenda approval. If there are any items that do not meet the approval for being heard on this evening's agenda, now is the time to remove those items. Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda as given.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve the agenda as stated.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The next item on the agenda is citizen recognition. So this is the best part of the night, I think. So, as many of us know, I teach at the high school, and I was on Facebook the other day, and one of my other fellow electives teacher, Mr. Ryan Chevroletti, also affectionately known as Chevy, posted something about the band competition Saturday. So I messaged him real quick, and I'm like, hey, what do you think about getting these, a few of the kids to the city, the city commission meeting on Tuesday? I honestly expect him to say, sorry, nobody wants to come, and I'm like, well, look into it anyway, because he messaged me at 1:30 in the morning because he was watching the Penn State game, I guess, after he got back from the competition. So anyway, he said he would bring it up to the students, and I don't know, he said something like 17 or 18 people would show up. So I was really happy and impressed and kind of blown away by that. But anyway, what we often do, or we try to do with the city, and at the school is recognize as many people as we can for their accomplishments. And, you know, I remember growing up in high school all too often, and I'm not knocking sports because I played sports, and a lot of us played sports and did different activities, but some of the other activities like the band, drama club, things like that, don't always get the same light shown upon them as some of the main, you know, more popular mainstream sports. So when I saw this, I thought this was a great opportunity because our band is always one of the top performing bands in the state. So this is a real privilege for me and for the commission to be able to recognize our band. They brought their trophies, so if you guys maybe set them up on the table or something, because we're going to try and crowd everybody in to get a picture here in a minute. But we've got a certificate of recognition, and thank you, Carla, for doing this. This certificate is awarded to the Aztec High School Band for their first place in their division for the 2018 Pageant of Bands. They won Best Brass, Best Woodwinds, and Best Percussion. So congratulations, folks. I really... Take a second. So we're all gonna. You guys are in high school. You know this. Everybody get up. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Y'all can put the trophies there on the table out in front.
We have someone from the town, I think, right? So how about if we kind of come back here and put the trophies facing that way, maybe? What do you think? Who's taking our pictures here? So that way they can stand back and maybe head. Yeah, turn around. Yeah, there we go. Who's like, who wants to hold the certificate with me? Cassandra knows. Who's Cassandra? Come here, Cassandra. All right, whoever. Well, she's a little bit shorter too, so we want to make sure she's there. Okay, that's cool. You guys figure it out, but we are on a little bit of a schedule. I mean, so come on, we got to kind of get behind, and we got to fit everybody in here.
Ronnie's your fault too.
All right, somebody give us a thumbs up when we're all done. See a bunch of thumbs. All right, I think we're good. All right, thank you very much. I can get a frame for Now, please feel free to stay for all this very exciting stuff. Language hearings and all that is very exciting. So, or if you want to go ahead and take off, that's fine too. No one will be offended. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, really. Cool.
So while the members of the band are getting settled in or filing out as it is there any other citizen recognition that anybody has?
No, sir.
No? Okay. All right. So next is employee recognition.
None, sir.
Anybody? No? Okay. So we have no employee recognition this evening. And the next is our consent agenda. Items placed on the consent agenda will be voted upon with one motion. If any item proposed does not meet the approval of all commissioners, a commissioner may request that the item be heard under items from consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to pull item F for some clarification.
Okay.
And Mayor, I'd like to pull item C.
Okay. So item C and item F from consent agenda. Any others? Hearing no others, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, oh, sorry.
No, you got it.
I would like to move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of items C and F.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. So we are at items from consent agenda. So let's go in alphabetical order. Item C, participation agreement with San Juan County for pictometry license agreement. Commissioner Randall, you had a,
I just wanted to check and see, so I saw, I'm just curious as how the county decides how much it's going to be, you know, because one year went from 10,000 to 11,000 to 15,000 to 41,000, and then shown in 17 it was 4,000, and then this year I believe is 22,000.
Okay.
I was just curious on
Yeah.
how they.
The amount that is determined by me,
Oh, okay.
based upon the number of sectors that we
What we need.
go
Okay.
for, because we get charged a certain amount per sector.
Okay.
The 1 year where we had 41,000, that was because we also, on top of the aerial sectors and the mosaic, we also ordered LiDAR, which is even another aspect where they do topographic mapping based
Okay.
upon LiDAR. And it was that year that we got the LiDAR, and that cost an additional 20,000.
Okay.
Last year, it was a small amount because I cut back for budget purposes, but then that ended up burning us. Because it turned out that this past year, there were things that we were needing for the airport and some other aerial photography that was outside of that area that I selected that we didn't have available. So I ended up this year expanding it back out to what we used to get about in terms of the coverage of the sectors in the aerial.
Okay. And then I was wondering too, is this just like the update for every year when they do the like the updated pictures, basically like when they do the flyover or whatever?
Yeah,
like,
what
can we
it
still
is
go
is-
off of last year's, or does this?
No,
do
they
renew it every year.
The pictometry is an organization that actually comes out here and flies it.
Right.
And their flight will be dependent upon, the flight coverage will be dependent upon how many sectors that they need to fly over.
Okay.
It also, too, their flight elevation changes depending upon whether you're getting 4-inch resolution, 6-inch resolution, or 12-inch resolution. I like 4-inch resolution, but to get better coverage, I went to the 6-inch resolution, which is less quality than the 4-inch, but I was able to get more area of coverage. And for what we use in the city, a 6-inch resolution is sufficient.
Okay.
A 6-inch will let you actually see a fire hydrant.
Awesome.
A 4-inch will allow you to see a fence post.
Okay. Awesome.
Wow.
Well, cool. That answers my question.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
all right, thank you, Ed.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
none from me. Okay,
Does someone make a motion?
you ready?
Hmm?
All right, any other discussion, any other questions on item C from consent agenda? Hearing none, entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move to approve authorized participation agreement with San Juan County for pictometry license agreement.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Can we just go ahead and, we don't have to call a roll on that, do we? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And item F, is that right, Commissioner Saib?
Yes.
Resolution 2018-1106, quarterly budget review.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question on the revenue decrease from the New Mexico Self-Insurers Fund. Just wondering what requirement we didn't meet and what we're going to do to fix it. That was a,
The city manager and our mayor didn't make it to a safety meeting. And it's required that we have that attendance.
okay.
And so, and what happened is that the way they're scheduled, it just didn't work out in the schedules
Okay.
during 2018.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, I think Chris already has.
It's already
For
scheduled.
2019.
Yes, it's scheduled. But is it just the mayor and city manager, or is it the safety coordinator?
Safety
And
coordinator
either-
did go.
Yeah. So it's either the city manager or the mayor, or all three required?
I don't know, you'll have to
I
ask.
think it's just the manager or the mayor,
Yeah.
Okay.
but it's already on my schedule
'Cause
for
I'm
this
not
year.
even-
Okay.
I honestly am not even certain what meeting you're referring to.
Yeah,
It's-
it's the safety, it's the safety council meeting. It's different than the trainings and such that we have.
Okay.
And it's required through the New Mexico Self-Insurers
Right, we have
Fund.
to attend,
All right.
even if we meet all of our safety training requirements, if we don't meet that training
Okay.
requirement, we don't get.
Well, we can,
Okay.
yeah, we can discuss
I'll-
this
Okay.
offline.
I just wondered, I just was wanting to know what requirements we didn't meet.
Yeah, and that was it.
Okay.
The safety coordinator made it that because the requirement is
Right.
also to have the
Okay.
additional officials.
Okay,
So, like I said,
Okay.
Chris has it scheduled. so.
okay, cool. Okay, well, thank you for answering that for me, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, so let me get to the, anybody else?
All right. Are there any further questions or comments on item F under tonight's consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to
Ma'am.
move to approve the resolution 2018-1106, fiscal year 19, first quarter budget adjustment.
Second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. We are at citizens' input. Citizens who wish to speak will sign up prior to the meeting. This is for items not otherwise listed on tonight's agenda. Are there any citizens that signed up? Okay. Moving into business items. We have one business item, Aztec Sparkles Lighting Contest Awards. I don't know if anybody has any.
Mayor, Commissioners, that's why we had the workshop, was to
Right.
discuss what we're willing to do for the Aztec Sparkles lighting contest. Given that we seem to be satisfied with what's being proposed, then the motion stands, and then what you'll have to do is note the amount that's being awarded, which the total is just right above the line there for
$7,250?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that includes the utility credits for the winners, and then also the making of the plaques for the winners as well.
So that's the
It's the-
total amount.
It's the
2,320?
2,320 for 2018. I think you're looking at 16.
That says 16.
Oh, I'm sorry,
we
yeah,
need to-
whatever, sorry, wrong number.
Yeah.
So it is the 2,320.
Right.
Yeah, it's the 2,320
Okay.
Okay.
to fill in on
Thank
your
you for
motion.
catching that.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. It's fine. Okay. Thank you, sir. Does anybody have any further questions? I think we kind of covered in the workshop, but just in case anything's come up since.
Kind of covered it here.
Yeah. So, hearing no questions or comments, I would entertain a motion for item A.
Mayor, I move to approve Aztec Sparkles Lighting Contest awards in the amount of $2,320 awarded to each of 4 residential and 4 commercial winners in the form of non-transferable credits to the City of Aztec utility accounts.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Carla, please call the roll.
Mayor Snyder?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Fry?
Aye.
Commissioner Sight?
Aye.
Commissioner Randall?
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. All right, now it's about to get a little interesting. We are moving into item 13, land use hearings. The first one, and I'm going to get some advice from either A, our city attorney, or B, our city manager, as far as, because the first one is not in question. There's no.
Proceed.
It's just, okay, so we're going to go ahead and proceed, so we don't have to reopen the hearing, and I don't have to do, unless I'm mistaken, the land use hearing script for this one, because we've already closed testimony, and we're just merely going to open discussion amongst ourselves after we tabled it for the site visit that we conducted this past Monday, or last Monday, I'm sorry. So I guess we can get started on that, and Commissioner Randall is recused from this, so the other 4 of us that were present can discuss this particular issue, this land use hearing, for Glen Swire number 1. So, who wants to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
After visiting the site, after rereading all the documents and the oil and gas guidelines and so forth, I'm really satisfied with what the Community Development Department provided as far as conditions and findings. And as far as I'm concerned, I would like to move forward with approving the permit and with the conditions that have been cited.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Commissioner Lewis. I just, after the site visit too, I'm struggling with the land landscaping part of that. I don't have any problem fencing it. I'm struggling with the landscaping because I don't think that it's going to provide what we think it's going to provide in as far as coverage. I think maybe the not privacy fence, but the stripping, I forget what it's called.
Basically, the slats you put into the chain link fence to cover it.
That's
Sorry.
closed.
What?
Sorry.
No, I know, I can't ask them, sorry.
Yeah.
The whatever that fencing is
Yeah.
that'll.
The stuff that weaves in
that you
between.
can't see through.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
thank you.
Actually, I'm in agreement with you on that.
But because I don't think that the landscaping will help that at where it's located. And after visiting the site and seeing the trash and the stuff that's around there from the residents, I'm assuming, because the well location was clean. Anyway, that's my only recommendation, is that we just do the fencing.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Sure.
I agree with Commissioner Sipe. After looking at the site, I don't know that adding a lot of landscaping to that is going to make that site more amenable. And so I think the sliding, the visual barrier, I think, is what we need.
I agree as well, and one of my concerns about landscaping would be the upkeep of it, and that it could just be an additional piece that's not really helpful.
Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Sack.
Sorry, I had one more thing. I just, I would like to see Hillcore also try to address that odor that the residents complained about. So I would like to see that, and I believe that is
It's
in
in
the
the-
findings of fact.
Right, okay, so-
That was my only other recommendation.
I hate to be the proverbial wet blanket, and I expressed some of these concerns at the last time we discussed this, before we decided to table it so we could do a site visit. That wellhead, and I'm just thinking as if, and I'm asking these questions of myself, I guess, as I talk to myself commonly, I'm wondering, I'm looking at it as if I lived right there. And that's where my concern is, because even with the shifting winds the other night, there was an odor coming from somewhere. We couldn't climb over the fence and get a pinpoint, the location. At the last hearing, Ms. Hutchins had said that it was very infrequent. And I mean, I don't know, maybe it was just coincidence that one time that we went out there, that there was an odor coming from somewhere, and it was quite strong. And some of the interested parties that gave testimony also said that it was a frequent thing that they would suck it into their house with their swamp coolers at 2 o'clock in the morning in the middle of the summer, and it was extremely uncomfortable, either physically or at least the smell of it, and in some cases they had physical issues with their eyes and things like that. And where the wellhead is located, it's in the very corner of the fenced area. I mean, I could almost, if my arms were maybe a few inches longer, could touch somebody's fence, their privacy fence. And I'm not an expert on drilling, okay? But that's where they're going to be doing the drilling, is right there in that corner. They're going to start fracking another shale formation. And I'm not necessarily looking to debate whether it's a less invasive form of fracking. It's fracking, period. And there are people that live literally 15 feet away from where that wellhead is. And not to mention the fact that the river is, I don't know, a few hundred feet away. And if this well is on its way, the production is dropping, I'm assuming, according to the anecdotal stuff that Ms. Hutchins said, because she did also make clear that she wasn't an engineer, she was an attorney, and that she didn't know specifically the lifespan that remained on this well, but she did say that, in her words, these are junk wells, quote unquote, and that they're merely trying to get a little bit more out of them before the lifespan, and they need to be capped or cleaned up or whatever. So they're trying to get a little bit more profit out of them, which I don't necessarily have an issue with. I mean, we make profit in America. That's why people open businesses and they take risks in that kind of stuff. We're in a capitalist society, and we're trying to make money in our economy. And I don't fault anybody for doing that. But again, I go back to what if that was any one of our homes, and we had children or grandchildren or any kind of respiratory issue, anything like that, and whether you do or not, just is it really worth squeezing a few more drops out of that sponge to allow them to set that up in such close proximity to those homes? Because those homes were not there when that well was originally drilled, and they haven't had to go through this in the meantime since those homes have been built. And I'm going to defer this to the city attorney, but from the information that I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, that these things aren't grandfathered in. So.
Not according to the ordinances, but
Right.
there are state laws and federal laws. One of the things that we're going to have to be careful about, and I would have to look at this specific instance, but we have to be careful of takings claims. So basically where you deprive someone of a property right without compensation.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we can't tell them they shut it down, but it's a producing well. So we're not saying you have to stop production on that well. We're not allowed to say that. And I understand that part. And again, if I'm off base, please someone kind of steer me back. But this is, anytime you start breaking land apart and forcing water and sand and chemicals to literally split the ground apart, you can't tell me there isn't an inherent risk. And you have homes right there. It's not as if it were 500 feet away. It's literally, it's me to Commissioner Randall away. It's actually closer from where that wellhead is to that home. And there's an entire row of them that face that street. And that's my concern,
Well, Mayor, I totally understand what you're saying, and I'm recognizing what our attorney has pointed out, that we're here to review the conditions that we have control over, and not to put the city of Aztec in any kind of legal jeopardy. I, too, could smell the odor when we visited the site. Number 7 of the findings says the gas odor needs to be resolved. That's why I'm saying the concerns that we can have any control over are identified in the findings and the conditions, and that I see it our responsibility to approve the permit with the conditions that have been cited.
And I guess then that leads to my next question, is who's going to determine whether that's been mitigated or not? Because the attorney from Hillcorp said herself that she didn't even think it was there. And so suppose I own a home there, or any of us own a home there, and we say, hey, there's this smell coming from this well, and you said you guys were going to fix it, and then someone comes out and is like, well, I don't smell it. And then you're going through this back and forth, and in the meantime, you're still getting woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning because you're sucking that smell into your house. And again, I don't have a well anywhere near my house. So ultimately, it would be very easy to just say, okay, yeah, fine, I get you. But I'm not the one that has to live in proximity to that. And just because there may be some concern about litigation, I just think that it would be irresponsible, in my opinion, from a safety standpoint, for a citizen that owns a home, they pay taxes, they go to work every day, to have to take that risk. I would not want to take that risk if it was right across the street from my house. That's all I'm saying. And I understand the kind of the, I guess the prevailing opinion, and I respect that. I just disagree.
Well, if we can't trust that there's going to be some follow-up on this, everything that we're talking about is futile, because the conditions that are outlined by the Community Development Department, we're saying they need to be followed if we give them this permit. So it's going to be the responsibility of Hillcorp to meet the guidelines and responsibilities that are set forth by the city of Aztec. We're going to have to trust them, that they're going to acknowledge it and pay attention to it and do something about it.
And with it being in the findings of fact, that does make them, hold them to to those findings of facts to take care of that. So, you know, and after reading our city attorneys, you know, and they do have the right to access their mineral rights, and it's not like it's a new pad, it's not like it's a new well. They're not making another footprint. They're going on the same well pad. I do have sympathy for those people, you know, who are experiencing with the odor and stuff, and I do think that needs to be resolved. But you know,
I mean, honestly, the odor is kind of the least of my worries.
But I think there's a lot of fracking has been going on in this in the oil and gas world since I think the 50s or 60s for a long time.
Right.
But now, all of a sudden, in the last few years, there's all this, and there's a lot of misinformation out there about fracking. So, you know, I'll discuss that on a later thing, but there's a whole lot of misinformation out there about fracking. So I don't know. I think with these findings of facts, and I think that I think it's, my opinion is it's in the best interest for the city and for, you know, to let them rework this well.
And again, I see the prevailing opinion, and I would feel like I'm not doing my job if I'm not at least bringing up concerns, and that's why we're having this discussion. I just know that if anything were to happen, and I would feel pretty bad if I voted for this and said this was okay, and then something happened to one of those homes or anybody around there because of an accident. And accidents happen. I'm not saying that somebody's going out there maliciously trying to do something bad to the community, but accidents happen, and that's not going to, you know, saying we made a mistake and we mitigate that with a fine or whatever the case is, or compensation is not going to fix, you know, potential consequences from something in such close proximity. I mean, it is not even a spit away from these homes, and that's what I think it's a safety concern that I, in good conscience, cannot say this is in the best interest of anybody except for Hillcore.
But your safety concerns, I mean, there could be, I mean, you're saying something could happen, something could happen with the gas that flows into their home that has nothing to do with that well.
That's true, too, and I could get hit by a car when I walk home today.
Accidents are accidents.
That I'm going to jump in front of a car.
I think that I think the oil and gas industry does, because they live in these communities too. Their families are here, their kids are being raised here, their grandkids are being raised here, and so I think that they, you know, they have the same safety concerns that everybody else does for people. They are not, they're living in that community also.
I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I think that I'm not saying that they aren't going to be safe, but I'm safe when I drive every day. And I have had accidents before. I have hit dogs, you know, and I felt terrible. And, you know, but so it could still happen. And that's what I'm just saying, that because of the type of well that has been described by Hillcorp in the hearing, that it was merely trying to kind of, you know, for lack of a better phrase, and forgive me for not having the technical terminology, to squeeze a little bit more gas out of that well, that because of where it's located, and again, if this was located like the one last year where we were talking, you know, where before I was on commission, about the one up around Football Hill behind the high school, I feel like that's a different conversation, you know, and that's, I would understand and I would completely agree that, you know, that might be a reasonable request, but because of the proximity to the homes, that's my big hang-up. It's not that I'm trying to deny anybody their ability to make profit or to do their job. There's 1,500 something wells, I believe, in the region, in the city limits area, or just in close proximity to it, and I just don't think that this one well is so vital that it's worth the safety risk, and that's where I'm coming from. So I guess, you know, if we see differently on that, that's okay. I mean, we're going to see differently on some things. That's why we have these conversations.
Right.
But I just want to be on record for saying that I don't think it's worth it.
Can I make one statement as to the odor issue? I was just looking through the ordinances again real quick, And section 15-26 talks about environmental health standards, air and water quality. And it says all operations during the construction, maintenance, and operation of any minor and or major oil and gas facility shall be conducted in such a manner that shall not be conducted in such a manner that creates an odor nuisance. And then if you go to 15-33, which I talked about last time, it basically talks about that at all times these wells must be in compliance with our ordinances. So I would just say that there is a little bit of teeth here in terms of a continued odor smell. And I'm sorry it took me a while to speak to that, but
Thank you.
there we are.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I mean, and I don't want to belabor the point anymore. I think I've said what I have to say. So if there's no further discussion on land use hearing item A, we can entertain a motion, I guess.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to move to approve oil and gas 18-04 and oil and gas well application submitted by Carrie Hutchins on behalf of Hillcore San Juan LP for permission to modify an existing well at the location indicated per the staff report with recommended conditions and suggested finding of facts with the exception of the landscaping.
I second it.
Does that cover it, Carla? Did you get that?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Carla, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Snyder?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Fry?
Yes.
Commissioner Syke?
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-1.
Okay. Item B under land use hearings. This is where it's going to get a little interesting, folks. I'm not sure how we're going to, who wants to open this up? I guess.
I'm going to refer to Nikki to go through or take you guys through the process to.
Okay. We've had some ex parte communications in this matter. I'm going to request that the commissioners who have had ex parte communication so identify themselves, please.
I did.
Okay. And as is still noted, Commissioner Randall is not a party to this. So as it stands, we have an issue with quorum. But through research, the real issue is due process, and that basically parties be heard. And so what we will do is I would like a brief summation of what the ex parte communication was, and then I'm going to advise that you do not consider that ex parte communication, and then I believe we're going to reopen the hearing so that Hillcorp may have its say as to whether it feels the need to have additional evidence presented. Again, I am advising the commissioners not to consider anything that has been heard by them, but we will reopen it, and then, you know, if Hillcorp needs additional time or anything like that, that will be discussed. So let's start with the mayor.
Okay. Just briefly, I received, and I believe we all received an email. However, I opened it, and I also received a phone call from the person that sent the email, Anna Evers. She's part of the Chafee Trust. I believe she lives in California. And initially, she had claimed to have not received any notice of the land use hearing regarding, you know, because the well in question is on Chafee Trust property. It's, for those that weren't here before, it's in the North Main, across the ditch from McCoy Elementary. So I received a phone call, and in retrospect, I should have just hit the decline button, but I answered it because I answered the phone, okay? And she spoke with me and expressed concerns about recompleting of that well because of potential business interest in the North Main piece of property. And she relayed to me that they are in a position, perhaps, they don't know yet, that there may be an interested investor, and that well, extending the life of that well could potentially jeopardize their business interests for that part of property, because they think it might be something like an assisted living or a senior living center, or perhaps a hotel or lodging of some sort, and because of the required setbacks, it would make it difficult to use that piece of property for such a development. I did tell her that I could not discuss the hearing because it had been closed. I couldn't comment on anything that she said, and that basically, it's a done deal, and the only thing that I could do was find out if she did in fact receive, if there was some sort of record showing that it was sent to her and somebody signed for it, which I've since found out somebody signed for it. She claims it wasn't her, but it was somebody that signed for the certified letter. And that was really the extent of my conversation with her. So.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Fry?
I got the same call and the same email. I did not accept the call, but a long voicemail was provided that with the same details. And the only thing I would add is that they did go into the dangers of fracking, the potential of earthquakes, and concern about the Aztec ruins, the downtown historical buildings being affected by it. But otherwise, they were probably pretty identical, the emails and the phone call.
Okay. Commissioner Sight?
Kind of the same thing. I was out of town and I did answer the phone not knowing who it was. And so anyway, I just shared it was from Miss Evers, and I did share with her that that we had tabled the hearing on tonight's agenda was tabled from September, that we had already had the hearing the last meeting in September, and my only advice was that I would try to get a hold of Stephen and find out about her not saying that she was not notified. And again, I have since found out that they were notified. And then I did not read her email though, but I also got a long phone message, voicemail from Jean Chappie, who is one of the landowners, a long voicemail, and I did not return her call. And then there was also an email from her, and I didn't open that.
Yeah, I received an email today as well, but
the phone call I didn't
open that
until I
email
opened the
either,
voicemail. I didn't know who it was from. So anyway, that's the gist of it.
Okay. And you understand that you should not consider that in our proceedings today?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and reopen the hearing. If Hillcorp has anything that they would like to say, any concerns, any desire for us to table this so that you can present additional information.
Now, let me just clarify. Is there a requirement to reopen the hearing if the representative from Hillcorp is comfortable with our summation of what we just talked about, I guess?
Basically, at this point, we're needing to hear from Hillcorp as to their, now we've disclosed what has gone on. We have some options here where, you could reapply and we could start fresh. But if you are comfortable with the disclosures and the fact that they have stated that they will not rely upon the information,
Obviously, the hearing has to be reopened to
Yes.
hear from the representative.
Yes, I'm sorry. So yes, thank you,
Well,
sorry.
yes,
We do have to
you're right.
reopen so that I can get an answer. Thank you for clarifying that.
So shall I go ahead and read the script, or can we just, okay.
And swearing in as well.
Yes, okay. Okay, so the following, and we are going to enter into the land use hearing at this time. So I have a script to read, and we have to swear in any of the folks that will be described as I read this opening script, and then we'll move into the things that we just discussed and move forward from there. Thank you for bearing with us, and the following hearing procedure is for all hearings on tonight's agenda. A land use hearing registration form is located at the clerk's table for those who wish to receive a copy of the results from this hearing. You must provide your full name and current mailing address in order to receive a copy of the land use hearing order. If you wish to testify and provide comment on the matter at issue, you must register with the clerk on the land use hearing registration form and be sworn in with staff, the applicant, identified parties, witnesses, and interested persons, identified by the parties and/or interested persons wishing to testify as indicated on the land use hearing registration form. Okay, we are now officially moving into the land use hearing part of this meeting. Is there a challenge to the jurisdiction of the City of Aztec Commissioners to hear any of the hearings on tonight's agenda? If so, please state the challenge at this time. Hearing none. Are there any conflicts of interest or personal biases to be declared by a commission member? If so, please state the biases or conflict at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Number 3, have there been any ex parte contacts regarding the upcoming matters that a commission member needs to declare? If so, please state the ex parte contacts at this time. And we have already met that requirement, so we have discussed that. So let that be kind of entered into this. Will staff, the applicants, parties identified by commission, all witnesses, and any interested persons wishing to testify regarding the oil and gas applications 18-05, a request from Hillcorp San Juan LP represented by, it says Carrie Hutchins, but I believe we have a different representative this evening.
Ben Mitchell.
Represented by Ben Mitchell. Please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Please be seated. Okay. So we only have the one presentation, and we can, I don't know if we need to go through an entire staff summary again. The hearing's open now, sir, so if you would like to maybe approach the podium and tell us, I guess, answer the question from the city attorney that she posed before we open the hearing.
So, based on everything I heard, I have no concerns. I truly don't.
Okay.
I can't think of anything that would stop me or make me postpone this for
Okay.
Hillcorp.
All right. With that said, unless nobody else signed up as an interested party or anything like that, I'm going to go ahead, after hearing that, and close the hearing to all testimony and open it to discussion amongst commission. So, who wants to start? We made the site visit. We saw kind of the lay of the land, so to speak, and where it was in proximity to McCoy Elementary, to the river, to the road, the rest of the North Main, proposed area that may or may not be developed at some point, hopefully will. So with those kind of, I guess, you were there with us. We're all there together. So who wants to? Does anybody have any comments or input or questions that we can answer between ourselves? Anyway? I'm sorry, I keep looking over here. I'm trying to look.
I have the same feeling that I did on the last one, that the Community Development Department has done a comprehensive review and that their findings and conditions should be honored, and that we can move forward with the acceptance of and approval of the permit with the conditions cited.
Okay. Commissioner Sy?
I agree with Commissioner Fry. The only thing I would say is that, once again, I think we should go with the whatever kind of slats or whatever in the fencing, but given where it is and the natural vegetation, even though some of that's going to go away, I don't think that landscaping at this point is a viable requirement. There's a lot of natural vegetation around there, and I know that some of it will go away as it gets developed, but that's why I would like to see the fencing, the slats in the fencing or whatever to make it kind of more of a privacy type fence.
If I could, again, in my opinion on this one, I'm a little bit more in agreement. Although the city ordinance, and this is kind of where I'm at, and we hear this a lot of time. We have all these laws on the books. We hear about all kinds of different topics and subjects. What's the point of having an ordinance if you're not going to hold people to the ordinance? It doesn't say, and correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't say in the ordinance unless you don't want to do it or unless you feel like it's not necessary. It says to meet landscaping requirements, to be in compliance. And maybe right now that's not an issue because it's out in the corner of a patch of dirt and nobody really sees it. Even folks going on the trail, if they were to cut through there, because when I worked at Aztec Ruins a couple summers ago, I would take that footbridge and cut through that dirt area and walk to my house on Church Street. And I walked by there almost every day, and I didn't even see the well there. I didn't know it was there. However, that is hopefully going to be changing soon. It might be a year, it might be 5 years. And again, kind of circling back to some of the things we've talked about as commissioners from the very moment that we got elected, we are, in my opinion, it's our responsibility to look more than just what's right in front of our face right now. We need to look down the road as to what could potentially be developed and be prepared, because it's much easier to ease off of something than it is to try and come back around and hold somebody to another standard after you've already set a particular standard. And the standards have been put in place long before I came to this chair. I don't know about Commissioner, I know the other two newly elected commissioners. It was done before us. So this ordinance was discussed. I'm sure it was workshopped. It was voted upon. And I think we should uphold the city ordinance at a minimum. And I think when we continue to allow exceptions, we water the law down, and we basically tell people if you try hard and you kind of make your case, then we're just going to go ahead and kind of let it go. And yeah, there are instances when I do feel like this could, and again, I refer back to the one on the church property behind the high school. It's kind of down in a little dip in a little bowl, and adding that stuff regardless, unless you built homes like right up on top of it, which wouldn't be allowed, you are not going to see that gas well. But in this case, the potential to see it at some point is very real, and I feel like we need to look at that possible thing, just like if there could be potential for homes or businesses there, that we need to do our best to mitigate anything we can to make it as attractive as possible, until the life of that well expires, whether it be a year from now or 100 years from now. So, yes, ma'am.
Just a comment, but when during the testimony and everything, even our community development, Mr. Saavedra said that, our regulations are commercial, like for a parking lot or a building or, a commercial building, and forgive me, but gas wells are a little bit different.
Right, but this is likely to be a commercially developed area, though.
I understand that, but to say that they need to plant a tree or a bush every so many feet and stuff doesn't really apply out there. And from my understanding, we would have to say specifically what we wanted to see and how many feet. And I'm not a landscaping expert.
I could check with the city attorney, but I'm pretty sure if we say in accordance with city code,
but city
unfortunately, I was just looking at
whatever.
The city code in this section is not clear as to what that requirement would be. It just says, establishment of ground cover shrubs and trees. So we would need to provide some guidance. The only part of the code that does provide guidance for that is in the commercial part that is talking about businesses. So we certainly can provide for landscaping. We just need to, if we just incorporate it according to that statute, I would say that, who's going to interpret that? But if we're a little clearer as to what you want, then.
So could we say in accordance with city code that deals with whatever the section is?
Yes.
That deals with the commercial property?
Yes.
And I do understand, but I'm just so hesitant to just say, okay, we're not going to worry about this right now. And then if we have investors that come in the next 6 to 12 months, that they're not going to be able to hold them accountable because we've already made our decision. We can always relax it and revisit it and say, okay, well, we're going to allow this to go for whatever. We can do that. We have that right and that ability to do so. But to say, no, we're not going to ask you to landscape at all, and then we have somebody come in now, and then we go back and say, okay, well, now we want you to landscape, and they're going to be like, oh, no. We're not doing that. And I'm not saying they will do that. They might say, sure, we want to be good partners, but I'm not willing to bet on that.
Well, I understand that. I'm just, once again, the water situation down there, how are they, if we require them to plant bushes and trees, how are they going to get watered? Unless we
I can't believe we're talking about water when we're getting ready to pump millions of gallons into a shale formation to frack a well.
I'm saying, how
we're
are you
talking about water
going
restrictions.
but they haul that water in. That's not
from a city source.
That's not on the thing.
It's city water, so that's
trying to get them to somebody to come and water it anyway. That's my.
And I see that as part of doing business.
I don't know
if I opened a bike shop or a cafe and I was told by the city that in order to open this, I have to put this stuff up, then I have to make a decision as a business owner if that's worth it to me. And it may not be worth it. I may say, I'm not doing this, so forget it. And I'm going to go somewhere else where they have different regulations or different requirements. But that's the statute that was voted upon by the previous city commission whenever that happened in 2013, I think. But it's still, that's the law of the land, so to speak. And I'm very hesitant to relax this because I've seen it too often with the oil and gas wells. And I just don't know, why do we have the ordinance if we're not going to enforce it when it's applicable? And when you have somebody that's doing business, they're doing commercial business. They may not be selling widgets to people, but they're in business here.
Well, then I would suggest that maybe we do natural vegetation or something that makes more sense than having to go and actually water that. And I don't know how you would judge. I don't know how to judge.
And I'm not suggesting
how
that
many
the
rabbit
ordinance
brushes
doesn't have
that
flaws
you have
to
to
it.
put out there.
We may have to revisit the ordinance at some point, but as it's given right now, that's what we have to go on.
Right, and maybe we do need to develop something specific to well pads or within the city limits. I don't know, but anyway, I think we could go on and on and on this on this. So I still think that where it's located, and yes, we're going to develop down there, but I think if it's fenced with the fencing, in my opinion is that I don't know that landscaping is going to help or cover anything more than what the fencing does. That's just my take on it.
Anybody have any further?
Well, I remain concerned about the upkeep of any landscaping, and I'm not prepared to describe what kind of landscaping we would have out there, and I don't know who is.
We don't have to. It's in the commercial ordinance. We can just refer to the commercial ordinance as written. We can do the motion, say, with conditions for landscaping in accordance with city ordinance, and the city attorney has it in front of her, or we can get it in front of us, I'm sure, in short order to specify that in the motion.
But where this is located, the city ordinance doesn't make sense to me.
Then I would say that we need to revisit the city ordinance, but that's not an option at this point.
Right.
So maybe the unintended consequences are something that we need to revisit, but as given right now, that's what we have to go on. And that's what I think, and I'm very, very hesitant to be overly quick to relax ordinances for whatever reason, because you could make that argument, on most well pads,
Yes, you could.
and it's an imperfect ordinance. I'll grant you that, but it's still the one we have, and that's the one that and I'm just saying, I'm one voice here. I'm saying that's the one I think we need to enforce. So that's the only the only comment I have regarding that is I do believe that in the motion that it needs to specify some sort of landscaping referring to the code that we have in place right now, because that's why we have the code.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, if you could open the meeting, I'm sure we could get you some options.
Okay.
If you'd open it for discussion.
Okay, so at this time, I would like to reopen the land use hearing to discuss the city ordinance as it refers to landscaping options for well pads or commercial entities. I guess well pads isn't really the right way to our landscaping ordinance as it refers to businesses and commercial entities.
And at this point, I'll refer to Mr. Saavedra with Community Development.
Mr. Mayor, City Commission, so upon hearing your conversation and being very unclear in terms of landscaping requirements, staff has had discussion on trying to narrow it down to make it a little easier. So we understand the area where it's situated. We understand it's a part of the North Main Development Plan, and that's why staff was outlining it in the staff report as a landscape requirement, because we're looking not just now but in the future. That said, we recognize the concern of irrigation and so forth, so perhaps the plants, trees, or bushes need to be specific to the area. So in discussing it with staff, we outlined plants such as rabbit bush, and I would be a fool to pronounce the proper name of that.
Drought resistant or?
Drought resistant, yes, on the outside of the pad. In addition to that, some type of vine that would go on top of the screen fencing so that it would just mitigate the appearance of it. Again, as I pointed out at the last commission meeting for this particular application, landscaping is a mitigation effort. It is not a cover-up. And so that's why we're looking at North Main as a site-specific location on where not only screening but landscaping would be appropriate considering the development plans in the future.
Does anybody have any questions of Mr. Saavedra while we're open here?
I do have one.
Okay.
So are you saying put a vine on the fence instead of the privacy slats or whatever?
Yeah.
You're saying do that and then some kind of a vine, something
Correct.
that's like some kind of a xeriscape thing?
So,
right. I mean, did I hear you right?
So what we are recommending is the slats around the well pad through the fence. In addition to that, a vine that would go on top of the fence / slats, and the hope is that that vine, which is very drought resistant, there's some that are very tolerant, would start growing out and cover it, give it some type of mitigation appearance. And in addition to that, they would have the rabbit bush, which I'm sure you noticed around the area around the site.
Okay.
I mean, because hypothetically, if you're going out there and it's undeveloped at the point when they do it, and there are things there, you could, move them. I mean, realistically, couldn't you? I mean, if there's vegetation already there, you could just move it over to meet the requirement.
No.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, moving established desert plants doesn't really work very well. We have to plant new ones.
So we'd have to plant some new drought-resistant,
Correct,
appropriate to the area, which could all be stated in the motion.
Correct. And Mr. Mayor, City Commission, if I may, lastly, we had discussed, if you're looking at trees, which is part of the ordinance, part of the requirements, and I would refer back to city code. This is site-specific, but it also has to be a hardship. So that needs to be defined. If you don't want to go with the city ordinance, there has to be a hardship identified. So in addition to the rabbit bush and the vines, we also discussed pinon trees, which are native to this area. which are, I mean, you could find them throughout Aztec, Farmington, San Juan County. Nobody's watering them, yet they still thrive.
Right. But we still have the problem of how many? How,
In accordance with city code.
And
It's not defined, I
and
think.
we understand that,
commercial.
and then that's why our recommendation is that they would be planted around whatever that looks like. That's up to city commission ultimately to make that decision.
right, but that's where the problem is. It's that word, none of us are landscapers, and how many feet between, you know.
Yeah, so.
Is that spelled out in that particular part of the ordinance for the commercial, for commercial landscaping?
Commercial landscaping is spelled out, and that
Okay.
is 1 tree per 500 square feet, 1 bush per 500 square feet, 1 plant. Now, we understand that that may not apply to an oil and well pad. Nevertheless, that is the current code that we have.
So how big is the well site? Like, how many trees are we looking at?
Without the staff report in front of me, it's identified in the staff report. Perhaps the easiest thing, if you are considering landscaping with certain trees, bushes, and vines, is a landscaping plan from the applicant. As you'll note on the application, there's certain things that need to be submitted at the time to community development. One of them is a landscaping plan. Community development looks at landscaping plans for commercial development, and we make the determination if this meets the requirements.
Okay.
We don't have a landscaping plan, so it's hard to determine something in the abstract. Perhaps with a landscaping plan, we can determine if this would meet the intent of the code.
So we could make the motion, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
No, yeah,
We
go
could,
ahead.
we could make the motion to say we could make the motion to approve the application. And one of the conditions is to submit a landscaping plan, and then that would be up to you to approve that?
A landscaping plan, and then if you want to be very specific, you'd say with the addition of rabbit bush, pinyon trees or not, vine, and so forth.
Or we could say something,
Okay.
you know, like, that includes drought-tolerant trees and shrubbery in the landscaping plan submitted to community development. Is that okay?
Does that cover it?
Submitted to or approved.
Approved, right. Now,
Submitted to and approved by community development
right,
department.
if I would be very specific, and it's all the intent on what you want to see. If the staff's perspective is that we'd like to mitigate this area as much as possible, and that's why we're requesting the screening or recommending the screening and the landscaping. You know, is it going to be 20? Is it going to be 30? I don't know. But that's what we would look for at a landscaping plan for any commercial development. Does this meet the intent? Does it, you know, we're not going to beat someone over the head, but that's what we're looking at.
Okay.
All right. Any further questions?
No.
Sounds good. Anything?
Nope.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I am once again going to close the hearing to testimony. It is officially closed, and we can, oh, I'm sorry. I retract that. We are not closed yet. Oh, goodness.
So just real quick, it sounds like your concern, specifically your concern, is the development in North Main and I guess the ability for Hillcorp or its successors to provide visual mitigation at the time that it's developed. So I had talked with Carrie Hutchins last week and proposed some language that might solve this problem. The language being, the well site is currently not visible along North Main Street development area due to the existing vegetation and proximity of the well site from North Main. Should development of the proposed park occur, or proposed development, I understand that you guys were talking about a park last time. Should development occur, Hillcorp, its successors and assigns will be required to reasonably landscape the well site to create visual screening.
Yeah, it was never meant to be a park, but
Okay. So
but
I
if we
would
put that in
propose,
there, that would hold them accountable?
So
Yeah.
I
So-
sorry, go ahead, finish.
So it just sounded like you're worried about us or our successors being accountable when there is development, instead of going through this and making us accountable right now, which it doesn't sound like anyone wants to do. We can
I'm
go ahead with some language in there.
Comfortable with some sort of language like that, but reasonable is subjective to me.
Nikki, you
Yeah, so I requested this and got it earlier this week, or maybe last week.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I struggle with who gets to define if development of the proposed park or property occurs. For example, I was discussing this, there's already some development occurring. And then when it says any portion of the well site that's visible from the park, I feel like this turns our power away. And that's where I struggle with who gets to define this and who's going to enforce it. So let's say that, you guys are like, hey, we're starting to develop it, so let's go ahead and please, do your landscaping. And they, if there's a disagreement, what happens? To me, I understand that there's an expense in, landscaping, but what you're proposing with rabbit brush and juniper, I mean, they thrive like weeds out there. Mm-hmm. So I think that, well, sorry, I'm only to give legal advice. I struggle with who gets to define the language that is in this and what happens if there's a disagreement.
So if I understand this correctly, it's that we should make that clear now and not wait and not leave that open for interpretation down the road. And that's kind of where I was going with the entire thread, I guess, throughout this evening as far as the ordinance that's in place, et cetera. So that's kind of where I was going with it. I didn't state it that well, but so yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Okay. So now I'm going to close this hearing once again to all testimony and give us just a very brief moment to voice any more concerns or considerations before I'd like to entertain a motion. So it sounds, I feel like we're kind of back to where we left off before Mr. Mitchell came up and when we reopened the hearing, to as part of the motion to have landscaping, we can define it as drought resistant or xeriscape. I think drought resistant might be a little easier term. That's just my opinion. Because again, I'm not a landscaper, and I'm sure there are more technical, usage to be had, but to use drought resistant, which gives a little bit of leeway for both parties, and to also have the landscaping plan presented and approved by our community development department prior to approval of the permit. So that's kind of where I am in just speaking for myself.
Mayor, if I could. Unlike the other site, which was kind of hidden and back, this could be very front and center very shortly.
Yes.
And that was one of my main concerns about it. So I find that I'm not ready to sit down and say, okay, we need 3 rabbit brush and 2, spirias and whatever. But I think if we let it go before the planning department and let them take care of it, community development, take care of that part of it and approve it, I think I would be satisfactory at this time.
Okay. Me too.
I think so too.
Are we all in agreement?
I think I have yeah.
Okay. Are you ready to try and put this motion forward?
I think I'll
Okay,
try.
so in that case, I will entertain a motion for land use hearing item B.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve oil and gas 18-05 and oil and gas well application submitted by Carrie Hutchins on behalf of Hillcore San Juan LP for permission to modify an existing well at the location indicated per the staff report with recommended conditions and suggested finding of facts, adding that the well will be screened and that we would like to see a landscaping plan submitted to our community development department with drought-resistant plants.
And approved by?
And approved.
And approved, okay, and submitted and approved by the Community Development Department.
I second it.
Did that cover it?
Yeah,
I believe
that's what
it
I
did.
had written down.
I think it covered it. So we have a motion and we have a second. Carla, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Snyder?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Bright?
Aye.
Commissioner Sykes?
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
The collective sigh. Thank you so much for kind of wading through that with us. I appreciate it. As always, I appreciate your patience.
Welcome back.
So, moving on to item 14, City Manager, Commissioners, and Attorney Reports. Mr. City Manager.
I've got want to discuss briefly, or let you guys know about the drought stage that we're in now. We're currently in stage 2. After consulting with staff, Water Superintendent, Public Works, we're in great shape now, but really the concern is going to be going into next year, depending on snowpack, what moisture and all that good stuff. So what I'm planning to do, and just wanted to let y'all know, is November 1st, move back into stage 1. Leave it to where we still have it in people's minds that we're not completely out of the woods yet, that it's all dependent upon snowpack and all that good stuff as to the position we are coming into the spring. So that's the game plan now, unless y'all have different thoughts about it, but just wanted to bring y'all into the loop. Like I say, our reservoirs we're at capacity now, doing fine, great shape, but we still have the winter to go through in the spring.
Weather.
Right.
Okay.
So that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you, sir. And I guess we'll just kind of go down the line. Let's see. Ms. Hunsaker?
I have no report.
Okay. Commissioner Lewis?
Nothing more than, I think I reported on the opioid meeting the last time, so nothing since then, really.
Okay. Commissioner Randall?
Yes, sir. I did attend the lodger's tax meeting this last week, and there wasn't really a whole lot of new business on there. There are a few issues, but they're not worth even discussing this evening. So I just want to let you guys know I did attend the meeting, so that was good.
And you had a
Very
quorum?
good. Very good.
Yeah, and we had a quorum, which was good and great, and they got some business done. And it went a little longer than I thought it needed to. But anyways, it was good enough for me, and they got work done what they needed to do. And as far as Steven's fishing report, I did hear the salmon are running up in Navajo. So there you go. A little shout out to that. And other than that, just a heads up, the first meeting, and I know we usually only have one meeting in December, so if it is as scheduled, I won't be around that Tuesday. I will be out of town.
The second Tuesday?
Correct, the second Tuesday in December. But I just know that might pose an issue because we only usually have the one meeting in December, so I will be gone the 7th through the evening of the 11th. It's possible I'll be back in time, but I just want to kind of throw that out there just so Carla knows.
Okay.
Just in case it poses any conflict, so.
Commissioner Lewis, you wanted a redo?
I did. I'm sorry. I meant to mention this. I did attend the program presented by the Chief Heel last week on the Aztec shooting. I found it incredibly informative, and I learned a lot of things I didn't know during that get-together here in this room. And I'm hoping it provided some closure from a lot of folks, too. So that's it.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
I want to thank Chief Heel for that presentation as well. It was quite an eye-opener and just excellent. Well done, sir. I appreciate that report and presentation. And I attended a staff meeting about Sparkle and the Christmas activities that are handled by the city, and I'm so impressed with the organization and everybody's participation, and I think it's going to be a great holiday season in Aztec, and thank them for including me in that meeting.
Thank you for working on that.
And I'll be serving cocoa. I volunteered for the cookies and cocoa.
Commissioner Sykes?
I also attended the Chief's Coffee and the presentation, and I thought it was very well done, not as many people there as I had hoped would be there, but the ones, I sat next to a girl that I've known for a long time, and her daughter was one of them that was up there, and she got kind of emotional during the presentation, and as I got emotional too, but anyway, good job, Chief, and thank you for doing that. I also attended the EDAB meeting last Thursday, and we struggled again with the quorum, but had a good discussion and had a presentation from Jermaine Chappelle about the closure of the San Juan generating plant and the mine and the impact that it's going to have on the community. I kind of would like to see her come and present this to the commission. I know the mayor was there, but there's some facts that just nobody seems to grasp. San Juan County's going to lose $3.8 million if those two things close. They figure $31.7 million will affect direct local suppliers, and so there's just a lot of information. And a lot of information that was given out during that presentation. I'd kind of like to see the whole commission get to see that at some point. Also, we talked about setting up the workshop with commission, and I think Stephen's going to work on that, a workshop at some point with EDAB board and commission. So that we can visit about that. I'm not sure when that will happen, but and I attended a Northwest Mexico Seniors meeting and then an executive meeting. Still working on trying to see how we're going to move forward with funding the programs for seniors, and they're still struggling. Excuse me, the 5 centers are still struggling trying to do so that we can do bulk ordering, like a unified menu. Because each center has their own favorites that they like. So anyway, they're still working on that. Another workshop that I would like to see us do, and not just on fracking, but we're going to have more of these oil and gas things, and just maybe to have so that we're more informed about the whole process. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm certainly not an expert in it, and I don't think any of us, maybe Austin, but. Just so that we have both sides of the story, I guess, on that. Anyway, just a thought, and I'd like to see what you guys think about it. But the other thing is we're going to lose 2 very valuable members of our community. Russ and Sally Burbridge are moving to Salem, Missouri, and also Jess and her husband Casey and little Mitchell are going with them. I attended a going away reception for her on Friday night through Four Corners Economic Development, but she's accepted a position to be not the county and the city community development person in Salem, Missouri, and that gets her closer to home, to where she's from. So we wish them all the best, but I'll tell you, we're going to miss them in this community. They were very involved in a lot of things. So anyway, just wish them the best. And our GRT was up again, so yay. That's always good news. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Just briefly, the Airport Advisory Board meeting was canceled due to lack of participation or response to the email to try and get things going. That's always a challenge. And tomorrow is my annual board meeting for ECHO. It's the regularly scheduled meeting, but it's their annual meeting. It's going to be a big one, talking about the strategic plan and some current litigation going on through ECHO. I'm sure I'll have more to report at the next commission meeting. Again, I want to echo some of the other comments with Chief Heel. I didn't see the one on the 16th. I saw the one for the city employees I was able to make. So again, thank you, Chief. And especially, as an Aztec teacher, it meant a lot that you put the time and effort into doing that for the community. So again, thank you, sir. It's always appreciated. And and I went to a candidate forum last night for House District 3 between current Representative Bandy and Challenger MP Schildmeyer. I thought it was interesting because they took questions from the crowd. It was over at the Senior Center here in Aztec. I'd never personally spoke to Mr. Bandy before, so it was an opportunity to get to meet him and chat for a few minutes. And just kind of see where they are on the issues, regardless of what side of the aisle you believe you fall on. I think it's important to hear them out and to make an informed decision. Early voting has started, and if you haven't voted yet, I highly encourage you to get out and exercise your civic duty to vote for our representative government. Okay? So that's my speech, my soapbox speech. So thank you, everybody, for going through this with us this evening, and that's all I have. So next is department reports. Seeing nobody running to the podium, I'm going to move to adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Somebody does run.
Yeah, before somebody does run up to the podium.
Sit down. Oh, these are cute. They're going to keep us from getting water on our...
Bring it up so we can have something to put on.
So you can have something to put on there?
Maybe I'll leave
I
the
never
water
took
here.
into account